proximity.
So we're back with another snapshot of something a little bit different to the norm. As the open beta for Division 2 is happening next weekend, I thought I'd take a look at what was playable in the previous beta test and ask, is it worth playing? If you do like this video and this snapshot series, typically looking at non-FPS titles, then do say something in the comments, perhaps even drop a thumb, a sub too. It helps me make videos just like this one. So I played a bunch of the Division on release before gear sets, when farming the Bullet King was actually a thing, when you could use the shield to glitch into and then farm non-started incursions. I was there. It was honestly great. The location of New York during the holiday period was utterly fresh for a looter-shooter game, and it was also beautifully made. I played the open beta of Division 1, and it was fun enough for me to get the full game. And then there were the problems. I feel like some things weren't managed well at all, players were punished for overcrafting in an odd way, and then things got nerfed to rebalance them. Of course, sections of the player base, me being in one of them, didn't like the changes. It was all we'd ever known after all, and my love started to dip, and I stopped playing. I never really returned back in a meaningful way. Seems a lot of those issues were fixed, but I never owned the DLCs, and the group of people I was playing with had drifted away too. I never stopped loving that initial first hit of the Division though. Through the hackers and the griefers, it felt like the Wild West, but in like a familiar setting. For some reason that resonated with me in a really powerful way. So the Division 2 closed beta invite arrived. Was I ready to love again? So if you're looking at the footage now, you're probably thinking, well, that looks a lot like the first Division, and okay, yeah, well, you're right. There's nothing groundbreaking different to this sequel. It's still a cover-based looter-shooter set in a lawless city, and hence, if you have strong feelings about that, then perhaps this new title isn't really going to win you over. That said, if your main complaint about the first game was the phrase bullet sponge, then things have changed somewhat. Yes, some people didn't like the sponginess of some of the enemies in the first game, or just all enemies if your damage wasn't high enough. It's perhaps okay in a fantasy setting with monsters and magic, but in a familiar urban setting it's harder to swallow. Just why are you needing to shoot that guy 5 times with a sniper rifle to kill him? So although I wouldn't say that the concept of bullet sponginess has been removed from this sequel, I would say that at least when those enemies are there, they have some sort of visual cue tied to their armour. You'll see people in vests or lumbering mountain like men in full armour suits. That satisfying just chewing through of trash mobs is present, but that sponginess is present in more boss-like enemies too, and they're more tied to the real world visually. I had thought that the change of setting might undermine the Division 2 as well. As someone outside of the US, New York always seemed iconic sort of in its entirety. The spirit and locations of the place is a backdrop to so many films and TV shows that it almost feels like somewhere you already know. Division 2 has moved to Washington DC, and although there are clearly utterly iconic buildings and locations, I'm not sure I know in my head what a normal block of that city might look like. Would the game still feel special when you weren't in one of those famous areas? I needn't have worried though. Division 1, a cold, snow-swept winter world, has been replaced with Washington DC during the summer. That cold blue palette has been replaced with a warm and altogether more organic feel to the environment. It's honestly really beautiful at times too. One thing that actually reminded me of Tom Clancy's Wildlands was some of the cutscenes, not in a particularly good way. Your silent protagonist mutely nods and reacts to all manner of cheesy dialogue lines. There's altogether too much Division Agent Super Soldier, and wow, the bad guys better look out, there's a new sheriff in town, which is meant to be some sort of power fantasy I get, but ends up being sort of patronising and sort of borderline insulting to me, though I'd acknowledge I'm perhaps particularly prickly about that tone in general. Not that the original game was some sort of masterwork of narrative, but the cutscenes when they happen, at least so far in Division 2, feel sort of throwaway. Better is the sense of story and progression you get from unlocking and expanding settlements. These are safe areas in the world which serve as a hub for more and different missions. Help out the people living there and expand those settlements out. Help sell the idea of actually helping people rather than just running around the city and shooting everything that moves. I'd say it's partially successful. It's nice to see things improve, but I didn't feel particularly connected to the settlement to really appreciate what had changed. It does ripple onto your main progression though. People can be sent back from these settlements to work on your main base of operations, so that does help things feel more tied together. The map and areas of the beta certainly felt more alive than my experiences of the first game. Sure, you might see some random mobs in New York, but Division 2 feels like there's so much more going on. just running in any odd direction might end you up in some large confrontation. The main storyline missions were very Division 1 as well. Go to a building, get the thing, protect the thing, some guys are attacking, oh there's a big guy, you kind of know the score. It didn't feel like a massive step forward from my experiences of Division 1, but in many ways I never really had a problem with that in the original either. I certainly enjoyed playing through the missions available in the beta with friends. I didn't get bored. Well, okay, there was one mission where I think the random person we got matchmade with was a couple of levels higher, which is okay. It's meant to boost everyone up to the same level so we can all contribute. But for some reason, the rest of us just seem to do hardly any damage. It's taking magazines and magazines to kill even just the trash mobs. We reset it a whole bunch of times. I think it took us maybe 30, 40 minutes for an encounter that maybe should have taken 5 or 10. It was the only time I felt frustrated with the game. And looking back, it did feel somewhat like a problem with the auto-scaling rather than the actual intended gameplay. On the technical side, there are certainly some issues during the closed beta weekend. I believe the first day was worse, and in fact on hearing about it I kind of skipped it altogether. The second day was apparently a bunch better, there was a small patch deployed. I didn't have too many problems apart from trying to join a friend's game, or actually inside of the PvP Dark Zone. Performance was okay. I've said before that my system is on the old side these days, but it did struggle to maintain 60 FPS in some of the open areas. Inside buildings was a lot better. Actually setting the game's render scale to be 85% helped a lot with frame consistency. And in the main it was difficult to spot the upscaling, and I consider myself relatively sensitive to the sort of artifacts that that process normally creates. There also wasn't an NVIDIA driver update for this test either, so granted things could improve over time in this regard. I mentioned the Dark Zone briefly there, and truth be told, I didn't spend much time there during the closed beta weekend. There was some unlock the Dark Zone style missions and then a brief look at the PvP before realising that the servers were having real problems. My friends and I were seeing each other stuck in the main doorway to get in, and then not moving around on the actual map. And then when things did seem better, we almost immediately got wiped by some other players who just seemed to be going rogue for no particular reason. And of course it's the beta, so there's nothing really on the line, so why not just turn it into pure PvP? It didn't feel like that risk and reward balance of the Dark Zone that I remember from playing the original game, but of course you're never going to get that unless you're playing the full title. So as far as the open beta goes, if you do like the sound of those changes, perhaps you have a couple of friends who fancy spending a few hours in this title, and I can say I really did enjoy my time being back in the role of a Division agent. There was some nostalgia mixed in there too, but it did remind me of the reasons why I so liked the original. Outside that, there's the longer term question of monetization for Division 2 as well, and granted this doesn't apply to the open beta, I thought, as we've got a couple of minutes, it's worth talking about. First of all the DLCs for Division 2 will be free. Hooray, that's a really great thing. So one of the reasons that I never returned to Division 1 was the lack of access to that new content. This change will certainly help keep the player base together. However, and slightly oddly, there's also a Year 1 pass that allows 7-day early access to those DLCs, and also, and I'll quote, exclusive customization items, additional activities, and more. And I really can't find any other information about what's in that pass, only that I seem to not be able to see it as purchasable separately, and it's only in the gold edition of the game and upwards, and that gold edition costs almost 70% more than the standard, which is obviously quite a lot. Also unknown is the other monetization for Division 2 on launch. Division 1 did apparently get their own version of those now anachronistic loot boxes. Will they be in Division 2 as well? Well, I can't see any public statements about them, but as I'd imagine they're looking to replace some of the money they won't be getting through DLC sales, I wouldn't sort of bet against it. I do really hope Ubisoft manages to dodge that option though and find some other non-RNG based system though. None of that applies to the beta, like I said, it's just a thought if you are looking at buying the full game. While I have you here, I've started another channel looking at tutorials on video editing. So if you ever wanted to know what to do with all those Shadowplay clips, then click the link in the description to LCTR tutorials, and I'll take you through using the exact same free software I've used to make this and every video I've ever uploaded to my channel. So thank you so much for watching this snapshot. I will see you next time. Take care.